It was the kind of moment you never expect, the kind that freezes your heart. I was lying on that cold, sterile operating table, fading fast. My breath was shallow. My body was shutting down. The only thing standing between me and death was the blood I so desperately needed. But when the doctor turned to Sarah, my own sister, and begged her to help, she just refused. "Please," I whispered, barely able to form the words. My world was going dark, and the only person I thought would save me was the one person turning her back. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Lily, and that night, my life was in the hands of the one person who should have cared about me more than anyone. But she didn't. Sarah, my older sister, stood by the bed, arms crossed, her gaze avoiding mine. She had always been the more independent one, the tough, no-nonsense sibling. But this was different. I'd been in a car crash, and my body was losing blood at an alarming rate. The doctors were frantic. "We need a transfusion now," they said. "We don't have time." My heart raced, a dizzying, sinking feeling washing over me. I thought she would help. After all, we were sisters, family. But when I looked at her, all I saw was hesitation. Why was she refusing? What could possibly matter more than my life? I was barely conscious, the pain unbearable, but all I could think about was Sarah. I had always been there for her, helped her when she was in trouble, covered for her when she needed a way out. I'd even sacrificed my own happiness at times for her. And yet, when it was my turn to need help, she couldn't even look me in the eye. "Please, Sarah, I need you. I need you to save me," I begged. My voice was weak, but it was the only thing left I could give. She was silent. The doctors exchanged worried glances. What was going on? Every second felt like an eternity. I could feel my body shutting down, my thoughts becoming more disjointed. The doctor's voice cut through the haze. "We need to act now," he pleaded, his eyes filled with urgency. But Sarah, she wouldn't answer. How could she do this? How could she let me die like this? I reached out weakly, trying to grab her hand, but she stepped back, avoiding my touch. My fingers grazed the edge of her sleeve. My throat tightened. How could she be so cold? The doctor turned to Sarah again, desperation in his voice. "Sarah, she's losing too much blood. You're her only hope. Please, we need your help now." But still, nothing. And then, finally, she spoke. Her voice was almost a whisper. "No." She said no to saving my life, to helping her sister. I could hardly process it. Why? Why would she do this to me? It wasn't the first time Sarah had let me down, but this was different. She wasn't just breaking a promise or leaving me in the lurch. She was choosing to stand by while I fought for my life. And I couldn't wrap my head around why. Growing up, Sarah and I were inseparable. Sure, we had our squabbles, like any siblings, but we were always there for each other, especially when things got tough. She was the one who held my hand during my first heartbreak, the one who convinced me to keep going when I thought I couldn't. I was the responsible one, the caretaker. I helped her with her homework when she'd procrastinate. I supported her when she moved to a new city to start college, even though it was hard for me to let go. But lately, things had started to shift. Our closeness had started to fade. It wasn't a single moment, it was a series of small ones. Her refusal to visit me when I had that surgery 6 months ago. The snarky comments she'd throw my way when I asked if she needed anything. The silence when I reached out, asking how she was doing. Slowly, it felt like I was the only one trying. And now, here we were, in the hospital, with my life hanging by a thread. And Sarah, she couldn't even look at me. The signs had been there. Looking back, I realized Sarah had always been a bit distant. There was a coldness in her that wasn't there before. I noticed it when I'd call her just to chat, and she'd give me one-word responses. Or when I'd try to invite her to family events, and she'd find an excuse not to come. But this felt different. This was life or death. And yet, here she was, unable to even meet my gaze. She didn't even seem worried. She seemed indifferent. "Why won't you help me, Sarah?" I wanted to scream, but the words barely escaped. The desperation in my voice grew, and I could feel my heart racing faster than ever. I thought back to the days when we were younger, when Sarah was my best friend. We'd stay up late talking about everything and nothing. There was a time I believed she'd always have my back, no matter what. No one would ever come between us. That promise felt like it was burned into my soul. But now? Now, everything felt like a lie. I thought about all the times I'd been there for her, and this is how she was repaying me? I tried to recall the last time we shared a real moment, a time when she actually looked at me like I mattered. I couldn't remember. Maybe it was the day I had to rush her to the emergency room after one of her reckless nights out. I didn't think twice. I always showed up for her. But now, when it was my turn to need her, she couldn't even look at me. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I was too tired to cry. I just needed answers. Sarah didn't speak. She just turned her head, looking away, her hands shaking. Then, in a voice that could barely be heard over the machines beeping around me, she whispered, "I can't. I just can't." I couldn't believe what Sarah was saying. I was begging for my life, and all she could do was push me away. But what happened next completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my own sister. The pain was unbearable, and every second that passed felt like my last. I could feel my body weakening, my mind spinning with thoughts of regret and confusion. Why wasn't Sarah acting? She was supposed to be the one person who'd always be there for me, especially in my darkest moments. "Please, Sarah, I need you. You're all I have." My voice cracked, desperate for her to understand the gravity of the situation. I could see her struggling, her eyes filled with pain, guilt, and confusion. She stepped closer, her hand hovering over my bed as if she wanted to touch me, but couldn't bring herself to. Why wasn't she helping? The doctor was becoming more frantic, yelling orders to the staff, telling them to prepare for a blood transfusion. But still, Sarah stood there, frozen. I thought about all the times I had saved her, all the times I had fought for her. Why was she turning her back now, when it mattered most? The machines were beeping faster now, a sharp, fast rhythm that matched the frantic beat of my heart. It was too late. It had to be. And then, finally, she spoke. Her voice trembled, almost breaking under the weight of her own words. "I can't. I'm not a match." I stared at her, confused. "What?" The doctor turned to Sarah in shock. "What do you mean you're not a match? You're her sister. You should be a match." But Sarah didn't answer. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, completely detached. Then, she took a deep breath and, with a shaky hand, wiped a tear from her cheek. "I'm adopted." I'm not really your sister." The words hit me like a blow to the chest. I froze, barely able to comprehend what she had just said. Adopted? It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. All those years, all that time I had spent thinking I knew who I was, who we were. And now, Sarah, my own sister, was telling me that none of it mattered, that everything I had believed about our bond was a lie. For a moment, I thought I must have heard her wrong. Maybe I was delirious from blood loss, or maybe she was just confused. But no, the expression on Sarah's face told me she was serious. She wasn't just saying it, she was living it. The reality of it was sinking in, and it was suffocating me. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like a scream in my head. I felt a tear slip down my own cheek, but I didn't know if it was from the pain or the betrayal. Sarah looked at me, her expression haunted. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to hate me." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Lily. I never meant for this to happen. But it's not just about us anymore. It's about who I am, and I've been running from it for so long. I don't know how to face it." The room felt cold and distant. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't. My head was spinning, my body fighting against me. The pain was getting worse. I felt like I was slipping away. "Is that why you've been so distant?" I barely managed to ask, my words slurring. "Because I'm not really your sister?" Her face crumpled, and I could see the guilt wash over her. But then, before she could speak, I felt myself drifting into unconsciousness, the world around me blurring. The world around me was spinning, and every breath felt like it might be my last. Sarah had finally told me the truth, but now I was slipping away. I was fading fast, and this time, I wasn't sure there was a way back. The room grew louder and faster with the sound of doctors scrambling, machines beeping erratically as they monitored my declining vitals. My vision blurred, my body trembling from shock and blood loss. I could barely feel the warmth of Sarah's hand anymore. Was it a dream, or was she finally going to help me? But there was no time. No time. I could hear the doctor yelling in the background. "We're losing her! Someone get a blood donor in here now!" But Sarah, she wasn't moving. Her hand trembled, hovering above mine, as if she couldn't decide whether to pull away or finally act. The guilt, confusion, and fear were etched on her face, her eyes frantic and lost. She told me the truth. She wasn't my biological sister, and for some reason, that had shattered everything. But was that it? Was that what had stopped her from acting? The truth was, I didn't know anymore. Memories flooded my mind, all the times we'd leaned on each other, trusted each other. And now, she was here, watching me fade away, paralyzed by something I couldn't even understand. But then, a shift happened. Maybe it was the desperation in the air, or maybe it was the sheer weight of seeing me at death's door. But I saw Sarah's face change. Her lips parted, and her eyes locked on me, finally, truly, looking at me. "I'm sorry, Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but thick with regret. I wanted to ask her why, ask her how she could be so cold and distant, but the words wouldn't come. My body was betraying me, and I could feel it. The darkness was creeping in. The doctor rushed to my side, shouting for the team to move faster. But Sarah didn't move. She stood frozen, and I knew that if she didn't act soon, I wouldn't make it. "Please, Sarah," I whispered, my voice so weak it was barely more than a breath. "Please, Save me. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, she moved. Sarah took a deep breath, her hands shaking, and stepped toward the doctor. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steadier now, despite the tension. "I'll give the blood. I'll save her." But would she? Could she follow through on her promise? Or was it too late? Sarah's decision to donate blood wasn't an easy one, but in that moment, I could see something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Resolve. The doctors quickly prepared her, and within minutes, Sarah was sitting next to me, her arm extended as they began the transfusion. I remember bits and pieces of the procedure, my consciousness flickering in and out as the blood began to flow into my body. Slowly, the beeping machines began to steady. I could feel warmth returning to my limbs, my mind clearing, and for the first time in hours, the fear started to ebb. Sarah stayed by my side, silent, but she never left. I didn't know if we'd ever be the same again, but at least in this moment, she was with me. When I finally woke up, it felt like I had been underwater for hours, disoriented, gasping for air. My body felt weak, but at least it was alive. My eyes fluttered open, and the first thing I saw was Sarah sitting beside me, her head resting on her hand, her face pale with exhaustion. I felt a lump rise in my throat as I stared at her. There was no anger now, just a deep, aching hurt. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, Sarah spoke first. "I'm so sorry, Lily," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to handle everything. I was scared you'd hate me if you found out the truth. But I couldn't let you die. I couldn't let you go." Tears welled up in my eyes, and despite everything, I felt a wave of relief rush over me. She had saved me. "I don't hate you, Sarah," I whispered. "But it's going to take time. I can't just forget what happened." And she nodded, silently acknowledging the weight of my words. The days that followed weren't easy. There were awkward silences, strained conversations, and moments where I could feel the distance between us. Trust wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. But the fact that Sarah had made the choice to save me, that meant something. It meant she still cared. It meant there was hope, however small, that we could rebuild what had been broken. Sarah's revelation about being adopted wasn't just about blood. It was about identity. It affected more than just our relationship. It had shaken her to the core. She had spent so long hiding from that truth that it almost cost me my life. But now, she was facing it. And that was a start. Months later, things were still fragile between us, but we were moving forward, slowly. I learned that family wasn't always about blood. It was about choice. Sarah chose me in that moment, despite everything. And that was something I could hold on to. We weren't perfect, and I wasn't sure we'd ever be the way we were before. But as we sat together, talking quietly in the hospital room, I felt a small glimmer of hope for the future. "We'll be okay, Lily," Sarah said, her voice soft. "I promise." And in that moment, I believed her. The darkness had passed, and with it, a new chapter for both of us had begun.